Degrassi The Next Generation first debuted in 2001 as a revival of Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High, and it ended up lasting for a really long time, 14 seasons, and it concluded in 2015, and that was followed up with a direct sequel of Degrassi Next Class. And throughout those 14 seasons of Degrassi, it was really an ensemble show, large cast, and while season 1 was definitely a little bit smaller, as the seasons went on, there were sizes of 20 plus characters that were main characters. However, despite this, you could really tell that they had lead characters, especially on the female side. However, on the male side, it's a lot harder to tell who exactly is the male lead in each season. So that's why today we're going to go over season 1 and see who is the male lead of season 1. The way I went about finding the lead of season 1 was looking at each episode of the season and then giving points to every single character, ranging from 5 to 0. Now, to receive 5, you are the main character in the main plot of the episode. 3 points go to the characters supporting that main plot. So, example, Mother and Child Reunion, the episode revolved around Emma talking to a guy that she met online and eventually meeting up with him. She received 5 points, and her friends Manny, JT, and Toby received 4 for being involved with that. And then the subplot characters, the lead there would get 3 points, and then the characters involved would get 2 or 1 point. Now, just because you're in an episode doesn't guarantee that you get points. If you have only one line or do very little to contribute to either plot, you're not going to get any points. And of course, if you're not in the episode, you won't get any points at all. Now, with all that in mind, let's look at the male characters of Season 1. In Season 1, there were 7 main male characters, 5 of which were students. Now let's talk about the 2 adults quick, Mr. Simpson and Mr. Radich. This season in particular, their role as teacher and as principal really didn't involve them being involved heavily in any of the main storylines. They were mostly there to teach or to be the principal and help with problems that may come up in those roles. And frankly, when you look at the main character of Degrassi, I don't think it should ever be the principal or a teacher, so it makes sense that they're not even in this conversation. So instead, let's focus in on the 5 students. These 5 students are from 8th grade, Jimmy Brooks and Spinner Mason, and from 7th grade, Sean Cameron, Toby Isaacs, and JT York. I will go from 5th to 1st and their points, and we'll discuss about why they landed where they did. And in 5th place with 25 points is Spinner Mason, which to me is just crazy to think that he was the least edited of the males in the first season. When you look at Degrassi as a whole, Toby gets demoted to a reoccurring character starting in Season 6. Season 6 is the last season where JT and Sean are main characters. Season 7 is the last season that Jimmy's a main character. None of them appear in Season 9, and none of them appear in Next Class. But then you look at Spinner, he was a main character from Seasons 1 through 9, prominent throughout all of those seasons, and reappeared in Next Class. But when you look closer at the Season 1 episodes, none of them Spinner was the main character of the main plot. A lot of them he contributed to, like Jimmy when he took some of Spinner's ADHD medicine to perform better for basketball, or when Terry was trying to go out with Spinner, but he wasn't the character that was the lead of that plot, which is really disappointing to see. Obviously, Degrassi changed how they viewed Spinner come later on, but he never had a relationship this season. He just wasn't the lead, not even of his grade. And that's why he came in 5th place this season. And in 4th place with 27 points is Sean Cameron. And he started with a little bit of a handicap, being the last main character to make his first appearance of the season. And despite that, I think Sean had a very strong first season. Now, he had 2 main storylines throughout the season, him dating Emma, and then just his tough upbringing, being held back. So they combined a lot of times in storylines, but he did get 2 episodes with 5 points, and in particular, Friday Night. That is a very iconic episode to me of Degrassi. That first date of him and Emma, I'd say is one of the most iconic moments of the show. I think definitely the most iconic moment of Season 1. I just love that. That's when you constantly look back at. And in Sean's run of the show, most of the time he's in a relationship with Emma or doing something involving Emma for his storylines. So really to see it all start out here in Season 1 with such an iconic first date that we still see in his final scenes with Emma of the show, I absolutely loved it. So it was disappointing to think he only got 4th place in the points, but despite that, he had a very strong first season, and I think really shows why he becomes a pretty big character in the seasons he's involved. And in 3rd place with 28 points is JT York. Now, in this season of the show, he actually appeared in every single episode along with 3 other characters, and in the first 14 seasons of Degrassi, this is the only instance that occurs. So it's crazy to think he's just in the middle at number 3 despite being in every episode. And when I look at the episodes of this season, there's only one where he got 5 points. That was episode 3, Family Politics. Now this was the one where Ashley's running for student council president and Toby doesn't want her to win, so he puts up JT to run and he actually gets very close to beating her. So it's more like a step sibling rivalry, and we have JT here playing third wheel. So it's really disappointing to see that despite being in every single episode this season. The one positive though is there is that episode where he pretends to be gay so Liberty won't like him anymore. Well, yeah, it's kind of disappointing he was doing that. What I do like is they're planting the seeds for this relationship that eventually comes to play. And by the end of the show for these two, I'd say their most significant relationship was definitely with each other. So it's really cool to look back and be like, season 1's where this all started to happen. So definitely some long-term writing here, which I love. But overall, to be in every single episode of the season and only be in 3rd place, yeah, pretty disappointing for JT. And in 2nd place with 30 points is Jimmy Brooks. And I mean, Jimmy was a really good character this season. I think he had a really good season 1 and left a good impression on people. I gave him 2 episodes with 5 points. I had previously discussed the one involving Spinner, where he's on the basketball team and takes some of Spinner's ADHD medicine. The other one was coming of age, and it was involving him being at his girlfriend Ashley's house, too much in her eyes. They ultimately break up for a little bit but get back together. And I think part of why Jimmy was on as much as he was, that was one of few relationships on the show this season, so they really showed it a lot. And I mean, frankly, I think probably coming into and leaving this season, Degrassi writers probably thought that Jimmy was the biggest male character of the season, although of course he was second, but he was a really strong character. They really protected him. He was really good in most of his storylines, and if things went bad, he learned by the end, more so than we see from a lot of other characters on the show. So I really liked Jimmy this season. I think he had a very strong season, and I think there's a reason, you know, he was a main character throughout the first 7 seasons, was on for a while, had some very good storylines throughout the years, and I think season 1 was definitely a good starting point from him, and I was kind of surprised to see him only end up at 2nd this season. And in 1st place with 35 points is Toby Isaacs, which honestly is a complete surprise when you think about his life on this show. But let's talk about why he is in 1st place this season. Like a lot of these other males, he had 2 episodes where I gave him 5 points. I discussed one earlier about the election with Ashley. The other one was Parents' Day, where his parents are divorced and they just fight a lot when they come in to kind of see how Toby's doing throughout the year. And I really like that they gave him an episode like that. And it's honestly, yeah, like I said, when you look at the run of the show, it's surprising to see Toby end up in the spot. But I think it's a couple reasons. One, his relationship with Ashley being step siblings. She was a very prominent character in season 1. So because of that, he was involved with a lot of her storylines, whether big or small. He just was involved with Ashley a lot this season. And then Emma, you know, he was attracted to Emma, wanted to date her. It wasn't mutual, unfortunately for him, but because of that, she was the main character of this season and throughout a lot of her run on Degrassi. So he ended up, just fortunately for him, being involved with the top 2 build characters of the season. So because of that, he was on the show a lot. He also had a couple moments of his own where he was a lead character. But it's still weird to think, knowing like the future of Toby. When I look at Toby's run on the show, after season 5, he's demoted to reoccurring character. Once he graduates at the end of season 7, we only see him one more time. Pretty small appearance in season 8. We really don't hear anything about him after that. It just seemed like Degrassi was ready to move on from him as soon as they possibly could. Of the males this season, he was the first one to be taken off the I mean, technically Sean, but he came back for season 6. But he really was the first to be taken down to reoccurring. And honestly, it felt like after Rick died, there wasn't much left for Toby. You know, JT died then, so he was kind of involved with that a little bit before and after, but that was kind of his last big hurrah. From there, he was pretty small, had moments here or there, but it seemed like they were pretty ready to, like, let's move on from Toby character, do something else. Because unfortunately, Toby was boxed in the nerd character, and the history of Degrassi's not good on those type of characters, and it's kind of disappointing because season 3, Manny was really just the sidekick to Emma in those first 2 seasons, and they really let her kind of be a character of her own. I don't know why they didn't do that with Toby. You know, they gave JT some more storylines in season 3 as well. Why couldn't they have done that with Toby? It's disappointing to see that's ultimately where he goes down, but he definitely does have some memorable moments. And honestly, the fact that you look back at season 1 and of all characters, it's Toby that's the lead. Honestly, without knowing what went on in season 1, he probably would have been my last choice. And I mean, there's a reason for that. He just didn't appear as much as the other males of the season going forward. But in season 1, this was a big season for him, so it's kind of disappointing to see that he just doesn't keep that going up. And season 1 was unfortunately the peak of Toby Isaacs. With the females of Degrassi, it's a lot easier to look back season by season and see who would be considered the lead. While with the males, it's definitely more difficult, so it was fun to look back at season 1 and see that of all characters, Toby would be considered the male lead. Now, I really like the show Degrassi, so I definitely have more plans for Degrassi content on the channel, so subscribe for more Degrassi videos. Thank you all for watching. This is Percy number 6, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.